Thanks, Ron and Moira. Dr. Don Page has spent his life testing and proving the principles of servant-empowered leadership. From his experiences as an analyst and advisor in the Foreign Affairs Department of the federal government, as a consultant/instructor to businesses, corporations, and academic institutions, and as a gifted professor and teacher in the Master of Arts in Leadership program at Trinity Western University, Don shares not only the principles but practical applications of how to lead like Jesus. He regularly conducts workshops across North America implementing these leadership truths with organizations such as the RCMP, Crisis Support Services, John Brown University, Western Washington University, the Evangelical Free Church, and many others. He's currently Senior Fellow and Professor Emeritus in the Master of Arts in Leadership program at Trinity Western University in Langley, British Columbia. And to say all of that is to say a lot, but there's more. Don, over 20 years ago, you and I co-hosted Huntley Street for a week, as I recall. That's right. And as I said kind of lightly off the top, but man, you just don't, you don't age. You look as good now as you did then. What's your secret? Genes?
The secret is walking with Jesus.
Walking with Jesus, with emphasis on both walking and Jesus, and maybe a good genetic component as well. Also good work. Don, you've written this book, and boy, it is quite the tome. Servant Empowered Leadership, a hands-on guide to transforming you and your organization. It's published by Power to Change. In fact, I should say right off the top, you're going to be having a book signing at is it Faith Family Books and Gifts?
Yes.
On Milner Avenue in Scarborough this Saturday from 2 to 4:30, and encouraging people to come on by. You'll sign it for them, and you won't give them the book for free, but you give them the signature for free, right?
And I'm also giving 2 free presentations there as well.
On leadership?
Yes, one on what is Christian leadership in today's world, and the second one is on servant-empowered companies. How do they actually work?
Now, I find this interesting. You're as much in demand by the secular culture as the sacred culture, if I can call it that. Why do you suppose that's the case? Is it because the principles apply to both, or have you developed a secular presentation and a Christian presentation?
The principles apply to both. And what we discover, and let me just give you some statistics, that servant-led companies are exceptionally profitable and very stable places to work. So they do not have a lot of turnover. There's just been a recent study that's come out that shows that if you take Fortune's 500 companies over the last 10 years, their profits, publicly traded companies, have been 10%. If you take James Collins' 11 companies that he talked about in his book, Good to Great, the profit was 17%. But if you take same 11 companies who are servant-led, the profit was 24%.
And that speaks volumes to a businessman.
It sure does.
Now, let's define our terms. What do we mean by a servant leader?
A servant leader is one who prefers to serve rather than to be served. Someone who says, my job is to invest in the people in the organization to make them successful, rather than they are here to make me successful.
Now, there is a kind of a mantra out there. It's been popularized by several people out on not the servant, but the leadership development circuit, who say that leadership is influence. Do you agree?
It is influence, but it's much more. The difficulty with saying it's influence is that, is it good influence or is it bad influence? We have in history many examples of people who have been leaders, but they have been a bad influence on the people whom they've led. I think good leadership is motivating and mobilizing others to accomplish a task or to think in a certain way that will benefit the people being served and bring glory to God. In other words, there's a positive benefit to the people who are being served in the organization.
Now, I'm thinking of a recent president who shall remain nameless. While he was president, the economy of the U.S. did really great. At the same time, he was anything but a moral paragon in the White House. On the one hand, good leadership. On the other hand, bad modeling. Can you be a good leader and a bad model, or should somehow the two have to go together?
They must go together. It's impossible to really separate them and say that is good leadership. So often we hire people based on their skills and experience and expect that they're going to be the leaders of the future, and we ignore 2 fundamental things, and that is character and attitude. Even people with good character may have a bad attitude in the office, and consequently that bad attitude destroys their ability to be good leaders.
Can a leader be made, or is a leader born?
A leader can only be made. There are no born leaders. Now, there may be some physical attributes that help ones along in their leadership, but leadership is something that you learn. You learn from the people around you, right starting with your family. Was your mother or father a leader? That's where you're going to learn it. You're going to learn it as you play in sports, when you go to school and interact with teachers. Those are leaders in your formative years, and then later on, you're into organizations where you're seeing leadership exercised every day, and you're learning from both good and bad examples of leadership.
That modeling factor is huge, huh?
Huge.
You know, it's really only been in the last 20 years that the word mentor has kind of become a part of the popular jargon of the day. But that modeling, mentoring element, as you say, begins at home.
Yes.
Now, a kid grows up with bad modeling. Does he have a chance to become a leader in spite of that?
Absolutely. What he needs to do, of course, is to find some good models. And usually they are so turned off by what they see in their bad models that they start looking for someone good. And this will often come, for example, from a camp. If we look at the camps that Huntley Street has supported over the years.
Circle Square Ranches, for instance.
Circle Square Ranches, there are many people who come from very difficult home environments, but when they come to camp, they're meeting a wonderful Christian counselor and program director and camp director, and they become the role models for them in the future and say, I want to be like them. What's in their life that I don't have?
You often hear this from professional athletes who maybe grew up in a single-parent home. And they talk about the coach, the high school coach or the university coach who really modeled leadership for them and turned their lives around by that model.
Yes, absolutely. And I think everyone has those people who have spoken into their lives as they've grown up.
Now, in case you've just tuned in, friends, I'm talking to Dr. Don Page, the author of this book, Servant Empowered Leadership, a hands-on guide to transforming you and your organization. It's designed, like who's your target reader here, Don? I mean, it's a massive book. It's full of content. It's not really a casual read by any stretch. Who's your target, and how do you intend it to be used?
The target audience are people who are in leadership or considering leadership. And to say, how can I lead like Jesus? Where can I get that information, and how can I put it into a practice so that I know that when I do this, I'm going to be honoring God in my leadership? And so I'm written the book to be able to share some of the biblical insights on leadership and then how to put those into practice. What I've discovered is that many people are wonderful Christians, but they don't know how to lead as Jesus led, and the book is designed to help them through that process.
Now, I want to look at some of what you say in the book, but before I do, I have to ask you this question. You spent some time in your early career on Parliament Hill.
Yes.
You were involved in the Foreign Affairs Department. You were a consultant. You were also a speechwriter, were you not?
Yes, I was.
Without naming names, did you see some good leaders on the Hill?
Yes, and I saw many poor leaders on the Hill, and it became very evident just by what they did, how they conducted themselves, and the way they interacted with you. Some leaders were the high and mighty types, power-driven, who looked on everyone else in their organization as just minions to serve them, versus those who really cared about people. And they reached out and said, how are you doing? What's it like in your situation? Can I do something that is going to assist you? And those were the leaders that really won the hearts and the minds and support of the people whom they led. And a department, a branch within the government functioned based upon the quality of the leadership that was in place at the time.
Can a prime minister be a servant leader?
Absolutely.